name's Jonathan Whitmore. For those of you who haven't heard of me before, it's probably a good idea that you keep your distance. No, seriously. I think the purpose of today really is to try and make it, as was said earlier on, to make it sort of fairly light-hearted. So if you have got questions to ask, then feel free to just sort of shout out. I've got quite a few things to go through. Hopefully we can get through all of them. If we can't, then I can certainly, cover any additional questions one-to-one a little bit later on. As James mentioned, Dragon, for those of you, just a quick show of hands, who, and be really honest about this, who uses and is familiar with Dragon? Quick show of hands. Wow, okay. Who has never heard of it before? Okay, one. Great. So for those of you who are familiar with Dragon, hopefully some of you, if not all of you, will be familiar with the different versions and the different iterations as the technology has improved. I've been with this organisation for 15 and a half years, and I've seen this technology come through its various different forms, its painful stages. For those of you who recall back many years ago when we were in single digits, version 6 and 7, it was horrendously painful. But if you think of what we're trying to achieve here, we're not trying to achieve artificial intelligence. We're trying to achieve and produce a tool that's going to make people a little more productive, overcome difficulties to make people use computing in the way that we often take for granted. We've recently released version 13, unlucky for most, lucky for some. So version 13 literally is less than about 3 or 4 months old. Now, if you can imagine the evolution of the technology from when it first came out, you had to talk like this to your computer. That was Dragon Dictate, as it was first known, and then Dragon NaturallySpeaking version 1. Probably talking, 15, 16, 17 years ago. So when I first came on with the organisation, it was version 8. There was a cosmic change between 8 and 9. It was the option to do the training. It wasn't, you weren't forced to do it. And in some cases, some people, it took days, weeks, months, and I think probably 1 or 2 people I've heard from, it felt like a lifetime to get the software to work. Now, we are bombarded with technology these days, and Dragon speech recognition as an assistive technology has come a long way. And if it's not for the end users and our Dragon partners, I manage a channel of about 55 to 60 partners across UK, Ireland and Middle East, just a small patch within the region. We are a global organisation, and all our development's done in the US. But if it hadn't have been for the feedback and the constant relaying of information between users and partners, then we wouldn't be able to develop the technology to where it is. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple of slides which will talk about some of the differences between the last version, version 12, version 13. For those of you who are stalwart users, I'm hoping that you will see the differences. I certainly have seen the difference, which is quite astounding because I've seen this in beta version. I've been testing it and trialing it for the last year, and I've actually seen the difference. The 3 main versions that are currently available are Dragon Home, Dragon Premium and Dragon Professional. I'll keep it fairly simple. I'm only going to mention Dragon Home once today because I don't tend to focus on that, and I think as we perhaps all realise in this room, Dragon Home is, as the name says on the tin, it is for home use. It's for mum, dad and kids, but that doesn't mean to say it can't be used. We're looking at the student area here, so we're looking at a different level of usage. Okay. So I generally cover Dragon Professional as a rule. In the UK, on the big island, the DSA, we have signalled to the government, although there are changes going on, as you probably know, that the Dragon NaturallySpeaking Professional DSA edition is the one that we're obviously looking forward to, and we're obviously discounting that into that arena so that we know that students that are being recommended the software are at least getting a fighting chance of getting the best version. I've got Dragon Professional running on this machine, and I'll show you some of the major differences between Dragon Premium and Dragon Pro. But that doesn't mean to say that Premium isn't effective, isn't efficient. It is. It's quite close to Dragon Professional in terms of the basics that it can do, the Microsoft Office suite, Obviously, we're talking about some of the pricing here. Again, there's been no change from the pricing across the board from the last version. We've kept it the same. In fact, we've reduced Dragon Premium down a little bit just to try and help things out. So, what are the new features? Everybody is kowtowed to Microsoft these days, and Apple as well, because I can't discount Dragon Dictate for the Mac. So Windows 7, Windows 8, and the various latest iterations of that, including 64-bit. One of the questions you're no doubt going to ask me is what's the minimum spec of a machine? And I'll probably cover that once or twice across the presentation today. My rule of thumb, and we never use Dragon in isolation, it's always used with something else, whether it's email, whether it's Word, it's Excel, and all those applications do take a little bit of processing power. So I generally say, and what it says on the box, and you can see the box over there, it says 2 gigahertz processor. It says 2 gigabytes of RAM. I'd immediately throw that out the door, and I would just basically say I'll double up on everything. We're now talking about i5 chips, and we're talking about 4 gigabytes of RAM. And the RAM, the random access memory, is the critical thing. The higher the spec of the RAM, the quicker the program's going to work. Because generally speaking, when Dragon's being used, it's being used with maybe there's screen reading software in the background. Maybe you've got LiveScribe as well. Maybe you've got Word and Excel, and they all take little chunks of power, little chunks of processing. So the higher the specified machine there is, don't sit on the minimum because it will struggle, the better experience for that individual. So 64 gig for 64-bit, 4 gig for 64-bit Windows. So there's some basic specs there. Some of the operating systems and applications that it will work with there, I think most of those most people will be familiar with in their various different versions and iterations. I'll come on to some of the specific differences with Dragon, or rather Dragon NaturallySpeaking 13. Probably one of the biggest ones that we've done is it's working more closely with the browsers. You know, everybody's more familiar with email usage and webmail. It was a bit of a struggle going back a few versions. They sort of got it right a little bit in version 11. Version 12, it was a little bit better. And guess what? Version 13 is even better still. And I'll be able to show you that as well. It's got to be faster. we wouldn't spend tens or hundreds or millions of dollars worth of development unless it was faster, it was quicker, it was more efficient. And hopefully for those of you who are working with slightly older versions of Dragon, whether it's 11, 10 or even beyond, maybe even 12, then you will actually see the difference. And it's all about, from the point of speaking to delivery of text on the screen. And that's what we refer to as latency. Now that word latency gets bandied around in all different kinds of contexts. But to give you an idea, when Dragon first came out, it would come up, a little preview of the transcription would come up on the screen, and you'd see it sort of almost thinking, going through all those different choices. You know, you say a sentence, and it's going through all the different probabilities of that sentence being right. Because Dragon, as we know, works in context. For those who are not familiar with the process, just very briefly, you can put words into Dragon, but if it's Dragon doesn't know in which context they are used, then it's going to struggle. And this is where Dragon Professional comes into its own, because the vocabulary that you can add is context. It's used in sentence. So if there's a correction to be made, if there's a wrong word that's been put on the screen, most people will just select that word, and they'll retrain it and retrain it and retrain it, even if it's used every day. Sometimes Dragon will make mistakes. It's not perfect. It has bad days as well as good. Always try and keep it into a context sentence, so a group of 3 or 4 words, because it then will come up with different options, and I'll show you how that works. Microphones. I'm a little bit cautious about saying this because some of the laptops that are being produced these days have got relatively good, I'm not saying the best, relatively good microphones on them. So one of the changes with version 13 is that you can actually dictate into Dragon without using a headset microphone. Now, I'm not about to demonstrate that in this room because there's quite an echo, and the microphone on this particular machine isn't brilliant. But I'm not, it can do it, and I've used it, and I've demonstrated it. I did some press meetings a while ago, actually using the microphone on this device, and it was pretty good. But at the end of the day, the better the quality of the audio in, the easier the transcript's going to be more accurate coming out. Okay, so first visual change, new toolbar. Woohoo! Yeah. We got to do something like that, so we've made it a little more user-friendly. You can revert back to the old toolbar if you want, but you know, that was just again, that was just another one of the little changes. We've also enhanced what we call the Learning Centre. So the Learning Centre it's basically the sidebar. The sidebar that Dragon that came out, I think it was version 11 when it first came out. And when it came out onto the screen, it literally scrunched everything up to one side, so everything just became just that bit small, and I found that really irritating. So I used to switch it off. This is now set, and you can change how it appears, whether it's floating, it's hooked, it's tied, it's whatever it is. It doesn't do that anymore. So again, that's a little. You know, it's talking about some of the feedback we've had from users. Okay, there is an interactive tutorial. So the tutorial for a lot of people is quite useful. If anything, just to do a bit of a memory jog at the beginning when you're first creating a profile. It steps you through the process, what to do. So somebody new to the process can create a vocab very, very easily. For those of you who are more familiar with the product and the technology, quite often it's actually good to just go back and refresh. But if you still feel very comfortable, you know, it's there, you can revert back to it whenever you want. The optimization, I won't dwell on this too much. Essentially, it's all about improving the profile. So you can set the conditions of how to optimize the profile, because there are days when we have good days and bad days as human beings. You know, I'm a bit stuffy with my cold. You can probably tell it in my voice right now. If Dragon struggles across the day and it's constantly coming up with things that I don't want it to say, it's made a mistake, quite often you probably think, oh, when I shut the machine down, or before I do it, asks you to save the profile. Now, I can guarantee, I reckon more than 80 and 90% of us in this room will probably do that at default. If you have a bad day, don't. Because trust me, if you have a bad day and you do lots of corrections, and there will be one or two, it'll undo all the good work that you've done before. So just think before you save that profile. Don't set it to automatic. Give you the choice, give you the option to save. Okay. Right. Okay. So I think probably the best thing to do now. I just wanted to show you a very quick video because we've been working a lot, specifically within the school environment, the sort of key stage 1 to 4, or the sort of primary level through to sixth form college. You know, the higher and further education is a fairly mature market in as much as that, you know, given that the DSA is where it is, I know the funding is very different over here, but I think at the end of the day, Dragon is a far more well-established technology. Speech recognition is far more well-established in the higher education. But one of the things that we did do is we're obviously working hand in hand with Dragon NaturallySpeaking for the PC and Dragon Dictate for the Mac, because the two are, you know, sort of fairly in line with each other. So we've got DNS 13 and we've got Dragon Dictate 4. So I've just got a short video to show you. So bear with me a second. Where's he gone? Oh, it's eluded me again. Bear with me a second. Where's this gone? Thought it was there. Oh, that's annoying. It was actually ready and queued up for me. No. Where's it gone? 4. Oh, here we go.
I'm doing film television course, and it's 60% practical and 40% theory. And all my practical work, I was getting 90%, and all my theory work, I'd get like barely 30 and fail. All my essays, scripts, everything. In my final year, I was told that if I didn't pass to 40%, I wouldn't pass my degree. So I had to then go for screening, and they said that, yeah, I was dyslexic.
I'm just about to start a furniture and product design course. Really excited to start the course, and Dragon Dictate will be really helpful throughout the course. I was introduced to Dictate when I went for my dyslexia assessment. They suggested it as a useful program because I struggle with sort of getting my ideas down on paper.
I was able to get my ideas out back then, but it was just a longer process.
It's a really easy process. Just install the program, do a bit of training, and it gets used to your voice. The more you put into it, the more you get back from it. Open up Dictate, open up a Word document.
And it automatically recognises words within Dragon Dictate, and then you're just off. As an art form, full stop. It certainly had me thinking about the true definition of film and how far the boundaries could be pushed, full stop.
It's much easier to verbally say than to write it down. I don't have to go through the whole thought process of spelling out each word in my head before I type it down.
When you have a keyboard, you kind of have to think twice. You know, you have to think about what you want to say and how you want to put it down onto paper.
It's like sort of running into a brick wall. Have the idea, run into the wall, and I sort of lose track of what I'm doing. Whereas Dictate, I can just say it and it flows a lot easier and sounds like a normal person. Before I had Dragon Dictate, anything about writing an essay or anything would just freak me out, and I automatically wouldn't want to do it. I felt like dyslexia was massively holding me back and slowing me down and just making everything a lot harder. But now I have Dictate, it makes everything seem a lot easier, and I feel like I could probably do better essays than other people can now.
I did my dissertation, my complete 10,000 word dissertation, using Dragon Dictate. Without Dragon Dictate, I would not have got my T1, and that's how helpful it was for me. Wake up, pre-production, dash. Once the final team had been assembled.
Other architects to talk about, bullet that.
It just makes everything so simple.
I think everyone should have it. It's a really useful program, it's easy to use.
For me, it's perfect.
We used to have a tagline a few years ago, and it was stopped quite quickly. It went along the lines of, buy Dragon speech recognition and get your degree. You could see where I was going with that. I was thinking, no, that could be slightly misconstrued. Okay, so that's sort of just a bit of first hand there. So I think probably the best thing to do is to just run you through the software. So as you can see, there is the new taskbar at the top. If I move my mouse, it automatically opens up to the new format. If I want to, and I don't like that format, I can actually go back to the classic Dragon bar if I really want. Okay, but I quite like it. Switch to desktop. Open Microsoft Word. Insert Dragon logo. New paragraph. Set font size 22. Dragon NaturallySpeaking can transcribe at up to 160 words per minute, comma. Quite literally and simply, audio straight onto the page, full stop, new paragraph. We as individuals find it hard to type quickly because we're more concerned about the word that's been written on the page and how often we'll have to press that delete key or even the backspace key, full stop, new paragraph. So you can do some very simple formatting actions. Correct the C. Delete that. So you can delete next word. New paragraph. Scroll down. Delete sentence. Top of document. Move down 3 paragraphs. Underline with individuals. Move up 2 paragraphs. Select Dragon NaturallySpeaking. Quote that. Select 160 words per minute. Bold that. Scratch that. Scratch that. 160 words per minute. Select 160 words per minute. Bold that. End of document. Just incidentally, I'm actually using I've just assigned a key on the keypad here. This is actually quite a useful tip for those of you who don't know it. Obviously the natural language commands which Dragon depends on is go to sleep, stop listening, all this kind of thing. So for example, stop listening. Now the colour of the microphone at the top there has changed colour. It's now showing a little moon saying that it's gone to sleep. So if I then say wake up, wake up, it's now listening. Okay, so I've just switched it off. So I quite often like to have a fail-safe key on the keyboard so that if it doesn't understand me, it doesn't hear me, you know, you're not seeing all my words appear on the screen because the phone's gone, something like that. Okay, so fairly simple formatting capabilities. When it comes to some of the other functions that you would expect to see within speech recognition, essentially anything that you see on the ribbon bar there at the top of the screen can be voice enabled. Now, because I'm using Dragon Professional, and I mentioned the minimum spec of the machine earlier on, if you're anything like me, you've got half a dozen of these things running on the background here in different windows. As I said, they all take processing power, and it's quite essential to understand that the higher the processor, the more RAM that you have, the more functionality the program's going to have, and it's going to work very quickly, or it's going to react very quickly. Okay, so when we start moving on to some of the other natural language commands, so for example, insert 3x4 table, 692,584 yen, cell 5, £5.42, scratch that. £5.42, scratch that. £15.14. Cell 9, €5.14. Scratch that. €5.14. End of document. Top of document. Move down 1 paragraph. Select Dragon NaturallySpeaking. Copy that. New document. Paste that. Center that. See, the trouble is with us manufacturers that we tend to overcomplicate things in demonstrations. We show you what it can do because it's a great product to use. Let's face it, not everybody is going to need to have this kind of functionality. But it's actually quite useful to know what it can do. Because all of a sudden, if you're in an assessment situation or you get asked a question by an individual student who can't resolve something or needs to overcome something, it's necessary to understand what the software can do. And I'm only scratching the surface. We've worked with individuals who have been completely paralysed from the neck down, totally dependent on their voice. I worked with a chap, you might have come across him actually, it was a few years ago, was a chap called Stuart Mangan. He was a very, very talented rugby player, extremely intelligent, really, really nice chap, lovely family. Anyway, we got in touch, we were put in touch. Stuart obviously had that terrible accident playing rugby. Anyway, as I got to know Stuart, and we worked with him for about 6 or 7 months, and he actually asked us, his mother, Una, bless her, she said to me, look, why don't you suggest to Stuart to do a video? I haven't got it with me. We would produce this video and so on, which he was really thrilled about. But we created the software and special scripted commands, macro commands. See, now we're stepping out of the Dragon Premium environment and we're going into Dragon Pro. There's a few heads nodding here, so I think we know where we're going on this. And it completely changed Stuart's whole outlook. He was building websites. He was designing bits on his wheelchair for the manufacturer. He was controlling his television using Dragon because we had it linked up with a Slingbox. He was sending and answering emails and text messages and so on. He was communicating with the world. Anyway, as we know, it was all very tragic at the very end. It was very quick, and anyway, but you know, Dragon really did change his life, and I'm still in touch with the family, and you know, some years down the track. But you know, it just goes to show the capabilities of what the software can do. So yes, we are guilty of overcomplicating things, but it's a great demo to do, and it sounds simple. It looks simple from someone like me. But it doesn't take anybody else very much time to get going with the basics. Okay, right.
Sorry, could I ask you a question now?
Of course you can.
I'm sure this is possible. If for students, the kinds of things they'd be very likely to want to do would be, say, to insert a paragraph, then a quote, then indent that quote, put it in single spacing, and have the rest of the document spacing in half. This would be standard academic formatting. It can do all of that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it can. I'll show you. List applications. 1. List applications. 9. Move down one paragraph. Select the next 2 paragraphs. Unselect that. Move up 1 paragraph. Move up 1 paragraph. Select the previous 2 paragraphs. Bullet that. What was the other one you wanted me to do?
Spacing.
Spacing.
Like double spacing, single spacing, spacing and a half.
So doing that on the fly, yeah, you'd have to use, okay, so you'd use a command like press spacebar, for example, or press tab, okay, so I'll show you. Top of document, move down 1 paragraph, scratch that. Insert after quite literally, press spacebar, press tab, new line, scroll up, select and simply, cap that. Anything else? I mean, at the end of the day, if an individual can use a mouse, then you know it's always quite good to encourage them both. But if they can't, then everything can be vocalized. All the commands that you see up here in the ribbon bar, once you start digging down into the menu, and I don't know, I'll admit I don't know all of them, because the only ones we tend to really have time to do is little things like you know, inserting a table or inserting a command or copy that or paste that. But quite often, if you want to insert a table, when we first discovered it, it was, so what would I say if I wanted to insert a table? Well, insert a 3x4 table. And bang, it happened. And all the different formatting and the font size changes and the text and the font size, as well as the design changes. All of this can be done verbally. But if it's a question of being able to use the two, a mouse and your voice, then again, that can make things a lot easier.
And you still got the mouse grid or not?
Yes, the mouse grid.
Mouse grid, yeah.
Yes, that's still, it's still there.
The 9 and 10 had the mouse grid.
Mm-hmm.
The 110, but still there with 9 and 10.
So the mouse grid, is that something that you've used a lot?
I would use it there. I use Dragon actually.
Okay.
So I would use it. Just sometimes, just a click or something.
Yeah. I mean, quite often you'll find that, you know, something is far easier. If you can't move a mouse, it's quite often easier. So the mouse grid would be, for those of you who don't know, mouse grid, 8, 1, 5, click. So what I've done there is I've just narrowed the field of vision down and down and down to the point I want the cursor to go, or the arrow to be clicked. You know, it could be a website, it could be anything like that. You know, now we've got closer links to all the HTML formats, so things like webmail and so on, as I mentioned earlier on. You can now do that. If it's a browser or if it's a website that's not particularly assistive friendly, for want of a word, then using something like the mouse grid, which has been around for years, using the mouse grid can actually overcome that. And as you said, you know, you've used it before. Did you find it easy to use, or was it?
Very vigorous. It's not so much easy. I have to.
Yeah.
I know I way of using the way, so obviously get used to it.
Yeah.
So for example, in that point you could say, you want to close that, you say mouse tree and jumps up. You don't have to go through the procedure, you know, things you want to act, once you get used to it.
Yes, I think it becomes almost sort of second nature, or just a natural language that you're used to. I think when it comes to using the mouse grid, if you're familiar with it, you have to use it. Then it becomes natural. Sending an email is send email to, searching the web for, search the web for. These are all based around natural language commands. At the end of the day, it's not going to be perfect for everybody. We have lots of different versions of Dragon, all the major European languages, so English, French, German, Spanish, Italian, Dutch. Yes, I've got them all. We've got US English. We've got development that's going on, or has been going on over a number of years, for different regional variations. And another question that might crop up is, how does it handle accents? I recently had a meeting with the Scottish Police in Glasgow, actually. Very, very heavy accents, quite difficult for me to understand some of these guys because they're talking very quickly. And Dragon, to all intents and purposes, didn't really have an issue at all. But as I said, it's not going to be perfect for everybody all the time. Different regional accents that you've got here in Ireland, whether you're down south or on the west coast, everybody has different ways, and that's why it's quite important to make sure that the profile is kept up to date. So things like, when the application is being shut down and it asks you, do you want to save the profile? If you have had to make lots of corrections that day, don't do it, because it'll undo all the good work that you've done before. And remember, if there are singular words that are incorrect, and you think, well, why has it got it wrong, or to, or the, or that? It's better to select the sentence. So you select whatever the few words before, that word, and maybe a word or two afterwards, because Dragon has the capability to understand more clearly in context where that word is, and it's going to have a better chance of getting it right in future.
Sorry, do you provide a program interface to define custom commands?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you provide the program interface to define custom commands, so that if I wanted to attach, like if I wanted to make a new natural language command that Dragon understands, and I wanted to open a program
Yep.
that I've written, or I wanted to do something in a program that isn't standard within the program, like, does Dragon provide an
Yes.
interface, program interface to do that kind of work?
It does, and that's a good question to ask, and it's quite poignant because I was going to step onto this. So again, some of the differences between Dragon Premium. See the box copy over here, which is Dragon Premium 13. Okay. The Dragon Professional box copy has got blue colour on it, but anyway, the major differences between the two. I'm obviously running Dragon Pro, so when I did things like inserting that logo, that was something I created. It was just a simple JPEG image, and I basically gave that a command. I called it Dragon Logo. No, insert Dragon Logo, I called it. So whenever I said that command, it automatically inserted that. So what's been asked here is, how customizable is the software? With Dragon Professional, not Premium, but Professional, it is totally customizable. The customization, the macros, the scripting, the visual basic scripting behind it is something that we expect our partners, our Dragon accredited partners, and they're dotted around the entire region. And James has been through this painful process, so he knows all about the scripting. But having said that, it's fairly logical. So if you want to set a program running, you can run a little script that will get a command, or that will understand the command. It'll go and start that program. Or I could quite easily, if it's an obvious name, just do a simple command, like, because when I start up Microsoft Word, I say open Microsoft Word. If the program that you're referring to is, say, I don't know, can't think of it off the top of my head at the moment, I don't know, text help, open text help, okay? The chances are, if it's not in the vocab listing, then a little macro command that would go and find that application and start it. Okay, so you can customize it totally. Does that help answer your? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Jonathan, just a quick while you're on it and while I would now. Punctuation. Never really explored that fully myself. And working with different people, when you say turn on punctuation for functionality,
Right.
it seems to confuse people. Is there a simple way of deconfusing people?
When you say confusing people, so I mean it is possible to put on what we call as automatic punctuation.
Mm-hmm.
So the way automatic punctuation works is it uses the intonation in my voice to emphasize a particular punctuation remark or mark, comma, full stop, etc. I personally don't use it because quite often if it's in a demonstration environment, I'm stopping and starting and you get a bit of commaitis. But if someone who's not particularly au fait with grammatical punctuation, then if they speak normally, as in the conversation, as in what they're trying to say is on the screen, Dragon will pick up the fact that there are intonations in my voice, so it'll put in a comma. So if you then say, at the end of a sentence, you finish the sentence, instead of saying full stop, and you say new paragraph, it automatically puts in a full stop. Putting in quotes and speech marks and so on, again, this is post-formatting, as I showed you. That's a difficult one, but as you dictate, open quotes, blah, 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 close quotes. Open brackets, put in brackets, close brackets. Insert after a word, insert before a word, okay, comma, new line. So it should be fairly straightforward. Does that help?
Yes, it does. I think where people are getting confused is it's almost looking at the technicalities versus the linguistics, if you like it. So it's the intonation. I think that's the key there, isn't it? It's working on the intonation of. I find people are saying to me, switch off the functionality. It's not making sense. Commas are going in, and if people don't understand it grammatically, then it's going to give rise to errors.
Yeah, I mean the punctuation, they've moved it around a bit recently, but it should be in the options. Where's it gone now? Commands. There's auto punctuation gone. Correction.
I suppose I should have clarified by saying, if people don't know where to put in the comma,
they keep moving.
stop, that's where the difficulty naturally will come in.
They keep moving this around. Well, again, what we generally advise is when the product has been set up for an individual student, that whoever is installing it, I would always advocate someone who knows what they're doing to install it. We'll generally ask them, okay, what applications are you going to be using on a regular basis? And this is going to be a hard question to answer right at the beginning of the course. So it's good to have someone on site, on campus, who has got sort of some experience and some knowledge that you can actually go in and change these options. The macro scripting, I mean, that's that's another little level itself, because quite often we find with students that they don't really know what kind of applications they're going to be using throughout the course. But if it's an application that Dragon's not particularly friendly with, as in it's not closely integrated like Microsoft Word is, for example, if you've got, I don't know, say a graphics package or a CAD/CAM or an engineering or some other third-party application, then quite often to get that application to work with your voice will require additional scripting, macro commands to be created. And it's not impossible to do, it's not massively difficult to do, but I would certainly consider, if it needs to be done, getting someone who knows what they're doing. As I said, all our partners, should be trained up, at least one or two people inside the company to capable of doing that. I know James has done the course and is more than capable of doing that. At the end of the day, if you've got someone on campus that needs to take on that responsibility, then it might be worthwhile someone like James coming in and having a bit more of a one-to-one sort of little training session with that individual if they want to take on that responsibility themselves.
Yeah, I guess within the scripting there's like, even yourselves here, you're using Progression, you probably would be able to utilize the simple script. So you can create simple things like, so maybe a typical would be open my applications, and that might open up Word, text out, and something else. So those type of ones are pretty straightforward. But I guess if it's more specific scripting, then I think there's a bit of coding that's required.
Sorry, did you say that the customizable stuff is only in the professional?
Correct.
It doesn't exist in premium?
No.
Not at all?
Not at all, no. You have what's known as shortcode commands, short key commands in premium. So what you can do is, you can add a block of text. It can be used in a commercial environment where, like a blank letter will go in. If I don't know, so if a student needs to write a report, like a lab report on a regular basis, if you've got graphical and you've got imagery in that, then I would, it needs to be professional, Dragon Professional, because then that has the capability, more capability of doing that. Dragon Premium is just really, it's at the top of its game. It'll only do basic text, okay? So I can insert, like a sort of blank paragraph. I can create stuff on the fly very, very simply. But you start to see the limitations of Premium, especially when you've got third-party applications involved, and that's something to be really aware of. If a student, if a graphics or design student, as an example, has to go through the assessment process, chooses to go through that process and have a consultation, then it's certainly worth bearing in mind that 9 times out of 10, there is a possibility that maybe other graphical third-party software, which is not that friendly with Dragon, that you might need to move on towards Dragon Professional, which can be done, and it can be made friendly, if you know what I mean. So Dragon Premium, you've got Outlook, Word, bit of Excel. Well, you've got Excel, you've got Notepad, and you've got Internet access. Okay, those are the 5 or 6 key applications that it will work with. If it needs to be outside of that, PowerPoint, Project, and any other the Microsoft Office suite, and any other third-party applications, then you need to consider Dragon Professional, in all honesty. There is a cost difference, obviously, and we're trying to make that impact as small as possible. Okay, one of the things I wanted to show you, which I don't know if you'd actually seen or were aware of, for those of you or students that may want to take notes on a recording device, let me just clear this up right now. This doesn't mean to say that you can record an entire lecture that's been spoken by a lecturer on the device and expect it to be transcribed by Dragon. It won't, because they're 2 different profiles. Plus, the audio capabilities of a lot of devices in a seminar environment, especially if the lecturer is down the front, and there are lots of students there, the acoustics and so on may not be that favourable. However, some lecturers will record their lectures and they'll post it up online. Some of the smart students, you can, again, this is moving into the professional environment, you can actually create a profile for that lecturer. You're nodding away like as you've done. So you can do that. So just to clarify that, the portable digital dictation devices, and this is just one of many that are available, generally speaking, it's designed for the individual. So you're either recording notes that are post the lecture, or you're in the library reading stuff and you want to make further dictation. Essentially, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how you can do this. I'm just trying to pick a piece out of today's paper that's a little more positive than some of the stuff I've read recently. Oh dear, Oscar, join in. A Royal Protection officer has been arrested following the discovery of ammunition in the personal lockers in the grounds of Buckingham Palace. Full stop, new paragraph. Scotland Yard said that ammunition is believed to be from the Metropolitan Police's own supplies. Full stop, new paragraph. The arrested officer was last night being questioned on the suspicion of misconduct in public office and unlawful possession of ammunition. Full stop, new paragraph. That's a cheery reading. Okay, so we've got 34 seconds on here. For those of you who spotted it, I put instructions in. Again, this is something that this is the tendency to overcomplicate things. It does work, but you do have to be very careful. Anyway, we'll give it a go. New document. Right. Transcribe recording. What I've done here is I've not used the Olympus software, which you can do. I'm essentially just browsing to this as a storage device. Okay, I'm just browsing through Explorer to this, so I'm actually asking Dragon to find me that file, and it's the latest one that I've just done there. Dated today's date, and it was at about just after 12:30. Okay, so that's just taken off the device. Let's put it through my current profile. It's taken into account the instructions, full stop, new paragraph, full stop, new paragraph. Yes, it works. Okay, and that's another one of the things that's improved in version 13. Previously, you had to have a different profile for a different device. So this dear old headset, they don't make them anymore. This decked device, the Plantronic CS60. You had to have a profile for this device, had to have a profile for the recorder, and any other headset that you use. Okay. What's happened now is we've taken the generic profile that I've created, and we've tried to trick Dragon into thinking, yeah, the microphone quality is pretty much the same, so let's just throw the audio through the profile I've created with this device. So I'm now including different devices. Again, this is something that whoever sits down with the students to go through the operation of the software does need to explain. It may take a couple of passes to get it through to them, but you know, I'm showing you now in a fairly controlled environment. If you're talking about lectures and library, you know, there's all kinds of random noise that can take place. You have to take that into account. So I was being a little bit smart by inserting some commands for that as well. But essentially, you know, that's not bad. I can't actually see any other mistakes in there. But that's just taken it off the device and just transcribe it straight onto the page.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Of course you can.
Just in terms of being able to transcribe straight away, so I would use Dragon, say if I'm meeting with a student, and then dictate immediately after the meeting. What I was kind of hoping for is some sort of cradle device that I can literally just pop the digital voice recorder down, and it would automatically sync up to know to put it into, say, a Microsoft Word, and then I can just literally hit save and save it on the student's file. Is that a possibility, or is that overcomplicating things?
No, not at all. I just happen to, it's just more stuff to carry around, to be honest with you. But you're absolutely right. You know, each one of these recorders is provided with a cradle that you can literally just stick it in there, and it automatically, you know, keeps charging and it downloads it. Now you saw the software pop up to say I've downloaded the software, I've downloaded the audio. What that means is that it's taken the audio off the device and it's put it into a little folder on the computer. One of the other things that you can do with Dragon, and this is where you've got lengthy files. So for example, let me just show you another one, and hopefully this will transcribe in the background. New document. Transcribe recording. Right, so this is a fairly lengthy file which actually Thomas Jefferson's, no it's not, it's JF Kennedy's speech. It took me about 10 minutes to read it through. It takes, as you'll see in a minute, this is about 4 pages long, so it's going to do that in the background. You can actually just drop an audio file automatically on the desktop or wherever you like it, and Dragon will just sort of fish into it, transcribe it in its own time. It's like a sort of like an auto-transcribe, okay? So as you described, you put the device into the cradle, it automatically downloads the audio file off the device, okay? It then processes that in its own time, or you can run it separately. I mean, if it's a lot of text like this, then it might take a little while to get through it, and you don't really want to have to wait. But I think to answer your question, I think it was cradle, download to Dragon, and it will process it.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's what's known as auto-transcribe. What I'm doing here is I'm doing transcription on the fly.
Sure.
Okay. Does that help? Does that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Premium does this too, or is this just professional?
Premium will do auto-transcribe. It's not a well-known fact, but yes, it will do. It's just one of the features that was felt at the time that you bring it into Premium and it could be a useful tool. Whilst we as manufacturers at the end of the day want to try and differentiate between our versions, we shoot ourselves in the foot because we have 3 or 4 main versions, and there's a couple of iterations in between. There's one with wireless headset, there's one with a portable device, we've got Dragon Legal, there's Dragon Medical as well, there's all these kind of variations. But if you want to differentiate between what's acceptable for education, Dragon Premium is the minimum, really. Anything less than that, I wouldn't consider it. We've gone one stage further, and we've started to talk to higher educations, universities, to say, well, look, as the demand is increasing, why don't you consider actually having your own sort of site-wide licensing? So if students have got a copy of the software on their own individual machines, much like the school environment, they won't necessarily sit in the same place all the time, but if they know that there's a machine on campus that's got Dragon on it, and if their voice profile is just trained on the once, so it's on their machine and it's on the campus machine, wherever they sit on campus, their profile is always accessible. And that's what we call as multi-user licensing, so the enterprise version. So it's taking the box copy software and it's deploying across multiple machines. So universities are now talking to us about either putting it on 50 to 100 or several hundred machines. And we're realizing that it's not just us. I mean, the screen reading technology is also being asked for as well, but it's becoming almost the norm and accepted application that needs to be on machines that are on campus. But Premium is the minimum. Obviously, Professional is more expensive, but you do have to weigh up what's going to be best for the individual. Does that help? Does that answer your question? Yeah?
I could see a situation though where it would be very convenient for one power user to own Professional and to be able to export created macros into the Premium of their students, for example. Why should the student own a very expensive piece of software that in actual fact only a Premium user really can use?
Well, Premium you can't have the macros.
You shouldn't have used the Premium there.
Professional is the one that you have macros and the customization. So somebody creates, and it's perfectly reasonable to and acceptable for someone to create their own macro. And give it to another individual that's got a copy of Professional, and they can use it as well. In the multi-site environment and the multi-user environment, you put it on centrally. Everybody's got access to it. You don't have to drop it from each machine to machine. Unfortunately, Premium is only in the boxed version, so one license, one user.
Well, sorry, because when you talk about the site license, that's for desktop or computers physically on campus rather than a downloadable version. It can only be for laptop use.
Yeah, so it's determined by the site. There are no home use rights at this moment in time that we've come to, or we've agreed to. That may change, but at the moment it's determined by the site. The software can be installed on as many machines or as few machines as the site requires, but ultimately it's accessible by anybody you know, who has access to that site, students, staff, lecturers, etc. I think we're sort of coming to the close of my little session here. Any more questions that you'd like to? Yes.
Mine is kind of more global. Like, do you have strategies for how to pitch it to students in a way? Because what I'm finding is I've, over the last few years, maybe introduced Dragon to 50 students, and maybe 3 years continuing to use it. It's the most abandoned software that I would find, that students give up on it. They get very frustrated. Their expectations are they'll never have to type again. A lot of these students are coming in with reports with specific learning difficulty saying that they need it, it's recommended for them, but they can't make the corrections because they're not aware what the correct answer is. The frustration levels aren't there. If it transcribes something like this, they'd never work their way through it and find the way to the end of it. So they find it overwhelming, and they don't like maybe having to dictate everything. If they have an ability to go back to a keyboard, they tend to do that. And the only students who stick with it are ones with early mobility issues, or as we say, those kind of students where they have to use it. And so I'm wondering, is there something that I can change the way that I pitch it, or the way that their expectations can be managed, so that they get more from it?
That's a very good question, slightly loaded. It's not a question that I haven't heard before. There are certain individuals that have an attention span of a gnat, and there are some individuals that I really just want to soak it up. I probably fall into the former. As in, you know, I got, you know, an attention span, and if it bores me, then my level of attention goes down, and it's very difficult to try and keep that level of engagement with the individual that you're talking to. You know, it's almost a sort of show, tell, now you do. Show, tell, now you do. I mean, on our courses that we provide our resellers, you know, it goes into the capability of actually training an individual user, as in how to train them. People with specific learning difficulties, you know, have different levels of understanding and engagement and knowledge retention. And it's not a question of just, right, sit there until they get it. You know, if they can't concentrate for more than 20 minutes at a time, then that's you have to accommodate that. There is no one golden, if you do this, it'll work. Unfortunately, there isn't. But if you come up with one, let me know. Yes?
Yeah, just I suppose follow on from that, and again, similar experience with students coming in with you know, there's this thing that you're going to use voice recognition, and this is brilliant, and this is going to solve all my problems. They don't understand that it's going to take a process to go through to get to a point where they're actually using it to correct. There's no trial version of Dragon. I know the reason behind it, that you have to go through that, but as you're speaking about something that's very out of the box now, or there's a shorter learning curve to actually get to the point where you can having a 30-day trial somewhere where you get the student to go off and try it, see where they're fail at it to a certain extent, where they're actually understanding the complexity and actually getting to the point where you're actually going to get using to it. Is that not something that could be used? Or I know obviously with other software there is that advantage of trying it with a student, figure out to go where they're meant to go. Yeah, no problem if you feel, you know, after going through an assessment and they're very much and I recommend it before we actually make the purchase, or they're jumping in and basically getting into you know, to using the software, especially when it comes to exams purposes where they're very much on use for exams, etc. Having a trial version of something there, we could actually go 30 days for a month going up and getting used to it to come back to then to revisit it again is important. And the second question about apps, mobile apps. I know the American App Store has a Dragon app available on the Irish App Store, for sure. Is there any kind of, do you have any use of Dragon app? Have you ever used it much?
It's been available for the past, when did the iPhone come out? 6-7 years ago. The app, one of the first apps to come out. Yes, the US market, yes, the UK market. It beggars belief as to why there isn't an app store here, as in the same kind of flexibility. Yeah. Well, it's available on the UK iTunes, on the US iTunes. There are 5 different apps currently. To give you an idea, we've had nearly 26 million downloads of those apps worldwide, and they are now across 50 languages. I don't know, I can't answer the Irish download one, but in terms of, I'm just trying to recall the trial, yeah, it's a bone of contention that we don't have control over the environment, as in not control of the individual, but it's if the individual has this perception of how speech recognition works and it doesn't work for them in the way they perceive it to be, then it's dismissed very quickly. The apps, to a certain extent, and Siri is, for those of you who've got, you know, the smartphones, you've got Siri on, that has got the Dragon engine behind it, although I can't say that officially. We license it to Siri, Apple bought Siri, etc. The rest is history. It's all cloud-based. If individuals are using that, that's a way forward. But free trials...
Because you're asking the student, or you're asking the service to make a commitment of €400, wherever it is, to that student. The student then, you know, after really obviously making the cost involved, 10 turning around goes, like you said, doesn't, as Simon says, you
Yep.
get 3 students out of, you know, who actually will make that jump to actually getting it. But the other 25, 27, probably 400 quid.
Oh no, I understand. And
even for a student to go off and buy it themselves independently, you're obviously asking them to make that jump. So
a lot of it is down to, and the training side is very important, you know, having that one-to-one training with the user, and everybody's different in terms of how they take knowledge on and understand it. I'm just conscious of time. Maybe can I come back to you and answer that in a bit more detail? Just very quickly, yes.
One quick question. You mentioned education in the UK. How low down the levels, or what's the youngest kind of level you would train up a user? 6, 7-year-olds we've had using the software. And you've had success with 6, 7 years?
Yeah, limited, but yes. We're about to start another campaign into the UK schools to see how we can improve on that.
I've tried it personally with students at primary level in Ireland, and it's haven't been successful.
Right. Okay.
It's sadly
Yeah, there's the understanding of the software, what it can do. That's the other issue for young kids to get over. But if someone does understand it, then but as I said, we've had, maybe that was just, you know, a few occasions where it worked. But 7 or 8-year-olds have actually used it. We're not talking to primary schools direct at the moment. We're heading into secondary schools primarily. You know, if it works well in that, then we'll move down the chain, as it were, into primary level. But yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, voice intonation as well, word command.
One very quick question.
Yes.
Would you recommend, is there any particular headset you recommend is better than oil or
God, manufacturers of headsets would love me right now.
Yeah.
There's a whole load of headsets that are available. It's very difficult for us to keep up with them. You know, the major brands, you know, you've heard of Plantronics and Logica and Sennheiser and Jabra. These are all on our website. There's a whole list of model numbers that are compatible. It's just so difficult to keep up with them because they're changing all the time. But my word of advice on headsets is, if there's a good quality one, make sure it's got a USB in it. Good. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap things up now because I'm getting evil looks. If you've got any more questions, then you know, give me a shout during the lunch break. But thanks for your time.